Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to welcome you to the last webinar for this season dedicated to the Italian contributions to innovation and sustainability. Let me thank Maria Teresa Cometto, who is joining us from New York City. Maria Teresa was conceived and coordinated the series, and we at the Institute are very grateful to her. Tonight we will talk about one of the fields where Italy has always been at the forefront, and we believe it will continue, fashion. To talk about it, we are joined by Massimo Ferragamo, the Chairman of Ferragamo USA, Julie Gilhart, CDO of Tomorrow Consulting, Sara Maino, Deputy Editor-in-Chief of Vogue Italia from Milan, I believe.
Yeah, Milan.
Milan. And Marina Spadafora, Italy's country coordinator for Fashion Revolution, among many other things. Before we begin, I would like to send a greeting and my personal thanks to my colleagues at the Institute, the Italian Cultural Institute in Los Angeles, who are sharing this webinar with their audience. And now I leave the screen and the microphone to Maria Teresa. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Paolo Berlera, for giving me this opportunity and for working with me to organize all these events that have been so successful and exciting. This one particularly is going to be so interesting because we have four very important players in the fashion industry. Massimo Ferragamo, as Paolo has mentioned already, and all the other three panelists. We know that Massimo Ferragamo is very busy with his business, and unfortunately he can stay with us only at the beginning. So I'm starting with asking him the first questions. Actually, this event, this conversation was meant to be during an exhibition at the Italian consulate here in New York City, where a few pieces of an exhibition from the Italian Salvatore Ferragamo Museum were supposed to come here to New York. Unfortunately, it was not possible, but for our friends who go to Italy this summer, be aware that the exhibition is now open in Florence, and it will be open until January, I think, 2021. So I hope that many of you can go and visit it, because I think from what I've seen on the website, it is fantastic. The exhibition is called Sustainable Thinking. And so can you, Mr. Ferragamo, explain what the project Sustainable Thinking means?
Yes, well, it is a very important subject, as we all know. And I think, you know, our company has been quite on the forefront of it because we stem back from, I think, the roots and the teaching of my father, that was always to be really, really true and to do things in the correct way, and using the most honest way of doing business, both with the community, with the people who work for you, with down to the customers, which have to be treated. You know, there's a couple of phrases I'm going to quote about my father's book. One of it is that every lady that comes to his store, he wanted to treat it as a princess, and every princess like a queen, meaning that you have to make people feel better in the right way of the expectation of where they want to come, they were coming in the first place. So investing in sustainable development means believing that use of innovative materials, the bond with the local community, all the things I mentioned before, are, you know, values that are very, very important for us, have been for a long time. Sustainable thinking, which I really hope, like you said, you will be able to visit in Florence, intends to present some contemporary artist experiences that are particularly significant in this respect. making them engage and dialogue with the many areas of research in the world of sustainability, of sustainable fashion, design, and materials. If you go to the exhibition, it's really mind-boggling, and I'm sorry it couldn't come to New York. We had organized with the Consul and the consulate this exhibition. There are some things that are amazing. I mean, I honestly didn't think they were possible. There is a couple of outfits. One is done with orange skin, 100% orange skin, you know, reworked, and it is amazing what the human mind can do when you really, with the most simple of things. You know, we complicate our lives sometimes so much. In the end, it's really about simple things and putting your mind to those simple things. Another one that was incredible, that I have to tell you a little anecdote. I had the honor of going through the exhibition with Tim Cook from Apple when he came and visited, and it is called Apple Side, Apple something, you know. So I said, oh, this, maybe your company made this, and we were joking about it. In reality, it was a raincoat made 100% of apple skin. And you know, he was really amazed for it. I said, probably we should do some covers for the iPad made in apple skin. Anyway, this apple skin was the name of it exactly, and it was quite amazing. So I mean, you know, and it's an exhibition where you see really where the human mind meets a natural element and what it can do.
Yeah, talking about materials and about your father also. One of the pieces of the exhibition is an iconic sandal that your father, the shoemaker to the stars, because he started working in Hollywood, as everybody knows. So he made it for the actress Loretta Young. That sandal is made of raffia and cork, natural and renewable materials that your father used very often. Why do you think your father was so fond of this kind of materials?
Well, you know, and I say this with great humbleness because I'm not talking about myself, which I could criticize all day long, but I'm talking about my father. He was a really unbelievable artist. And you know, some things he discovered by chance, but then he made out of that something very important. When you mentioned the sandal and the cork, you know, it was the 1940s. It was a time of war, so you didn't have available anymore the steel. The steel all went to do armaments, and you know, I don't want to get too technical, but inside the ladies' shoes, you know, there is a heel, and then there is a steel structure that my father invented that sustains the whole body. Imagine that poor shoe, how much weight has to sustain. In my case, a lot. But it is so it was very important to the structure of the shoe. When there wasn't steel anymore, he decided to say how, with a pencil, he started drawing and filling up the space. He said, how can I fill it up? And he came out with cork, which is a very light, very natural, very light material, but also very strong. And so he experimented based upon the needs. But in that moment of difficulties, which I think this should be a lesson for all of us during this coronavirus crisis, which didn't allow us to bring the exhibition to New York, but also in our life has created so much havoc in every one of our lives. From the toughest moment, he would come out with the most incredible creativity and sometimes with simple solutions. And that particular shoes, you know, he really thought of the cork, as I said, and of what to use. Leather wasn't available like steel. You know, you couldn't find leather anywhere. So he started playing with materials. He had, you know, he made shoes out of candy wraps, just weaving them and putting them together. And, you know, there's nothing more strong than a candy wrap. And so he worked with those. And really, basically, you know, it shows what, you know, when a great creative mind, you know, meets an incredible humble product or humble material, which you think in luxury, you know, forget it, that's not luxury. It is luxury because it's the mind of the creator that makes that material luxury.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, going on and talking about sustainability. Salvatore Ferragamo is still now a public company listed at the Italian Stock Exchange, but it's still very much family guided and family influenced. What are your family's values that help Salvatore Ferragamo be a sustainable brand?
I think that sometime I would love to say that we've given this so much thoughts and like that, but in the end is really DNA, and I go to the DNA of the founder that instilled in the company the same DNA. And I think we were lucky because we come from our company. We're talking about the company. Our company comes, and our family comes from someone who was first and foremost an artisan. And so when you are an artisan, you are so true to what you do and so real, and you experiment and you do with your hands and you do with your mind. And I think that having that as the base of the company has always kept us very simple, very honest, very true to what we do. And those are all values that we try to continue. And I don't think it has anything to do if you're public or not. If a company starts changing and that is not true anymore to what it does, then I think it's when the company really would start having problems.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier how the coronavirus pandemic has made a Vogue for all businesses, and especially the fashion industry. And it has also triggered a deep thinking, deep conversation about the future of the fashion industry. Many brands and many designers are rethinking their strategies, and they are talking about making less stuff of better quality and more slowly. What do you think about this trend?
Well, there will be a lot to talk about, and I'm sure that the ladies that are with us this afternoon know much more about this than I do. The important is, when I hear phrases like saying nothing is going to be the same, we have to turn around completely the industry. I mean, I don't think the fashion industry or the luxury industry was broken or needed to be fixed. Maybe retail needs to be fixed, but that's a whole other subject because that was having problem even before the coronavirus. But I think that it is, it's not like you have to change. If your company was good or if your company has been around 100 years, probably you are doing something right, and probably you have weathered a lot of storms because, in the last 30, 40 years, we have had a lot of storms. So I think that you have to see what works well and then think of that. Obviously, and I have always been an advocate of that, I think that there is too much deadline, seasons, things like that, and that make you produce much more products. Let's face it, not only in the fashion industry, but in the world, there is too much of everything, And so we have to a little bit slow down. And I think that to me, the fact of the season has always been being a little bit mind-boggling. It serves for the trade, it serves for the fashion shows, but there's one quote that I have on the wall about that came from my father's book, that when he was thinking about creativity, he said, I don't want to create with a deadline. I said, I want to create when I create, and I want to put stuff in the store because the moment I see them, I'm probably ahead, and I want ladies and to experience them. I say ladies because we're a little bit more boring. I'm sorry, I can't be politically correct, but it's true sometimes. And so, the fashion is dictated a lot by ladies, by the trends. And when my father was doing business, our business was only ladies. But so he said, and there's a quote of him that I love that says, I have no season. And that for a creative person is exactly the case. They create and they have to be free. So I think they should be, obviously we should apply that concept to have less and less of that a little bit less than what we had before and more intelligently.
Thank you, Massimo Ferragamo. In the meantime, the Consul General in New York, Francesco Genuardi, has joined us, and I think he wants to say a few words. Welcome, Francesco.
Grazie Maria Teresa, buonasera a tutti. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to the acting director of the Istituto Italiano di Cultura, Paolo Barlera, for this terrific panel, this terrific discussion today, moderated once more by the brilliant Maria Teresa Cometto. I think, if I may say so, that dear Paolo, you saved the best for last at the end of this cycle of very interesting panels. Today we have a really fantastic lineup. I want to say hello to Massimo Ferragamo, to Marina Spadafora, Sara, Maino, and to Julie Gillard. Welcome to Italy, Julie. And it's a great opportunity in the framework of the digital activities promoted by our embassy in Washington, D.C. I think it's a great opportunity today to focus on one of the pillars of our exports, the fashion world, and to focus in a very contemporary way, focusing on sustainability, on the ethical way that always has been a defining feature of Italian designers, of the Italian world of fashion, of Italian manufacturers. And I think it's a further sign that the webinar of today, of this afternoon, that Italy never stops. Italy never stopped during the pandemic. It never stops also to reflect about the way to improve the life in the future. I know that the Italian fashion sector is very active in Milan, in other places in the world, very active in this global reflection, as Massimo just said, to also find new ways of being, maybe getting rid of things that were more unuseful. This COVID time is very, I think is a great opportunity also to change and to update to the new sentiment, demand of the public. And be sure that, as always, Italy, just because it has a lot of tradition, is a country that will be at the forefront of innovation together with our New York friends. And I think that after the panel of tonight, there will be more and more partnership between New York and Italy. Grazie a tutti. Viva l'Italia, viva New York. E buon panel.
Thank you, Consul.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Massimo Ferragamo, for your time and for your insights. And let's hope that, who knows, maybe next year some of the pieces of the exhibition can travel and arrive to New York.
With great pleasure. Believe us, with Francesco would love to work on that if it will be possible and life gets back to normal a little bit.
Okay, thank you so much, and see you soon.
Thank you to all.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So yeah, we go on with our terrific panelists, Julie, Sara, and Marina. Today, I think it's a special day for Julie, isn't it? Julie?
It's my birthday.
Yeah, so happy birthday, Julie.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, so happy to celebrate this with you and with all our friends from New York, but also from Los Angeles. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And remember that you can send your questions through the Zoom app or through also the Facebook page of the Italian Cultural Institute. So, Julie, today, not only is your birthday, but it's also the World Ocean Day. And I know that you love the ocean very much. You are a great surfer. Unfortunately, the fashion industry is also one of the worst polluter of the oceans and of the earth, generally speaking, right? There are some scary data about that. For example, the fashion industry is responsible, I'm reading, for 20% of all industrial water pollution worldwide, and so on. Many other things, like textile dyeing is the world's second largest polluter of water, and up to 85% of textiles go into landfills every year. So, Julie, how can a sustainable brand address the pollution problem?
Well, I think, honestly, the most effective thing they can do is produce less. And, honestly, if everyone produced less, it's sort of like what we realized with COVID, when everything shut down, all of a sudden nature became alive. And if you're here in New York, you know that the air quality is 25% better. The trees are greener. You can see birds, you can hear birds. That's just, we always have to address that. And the fashion business doesn't like to hear that, but that is actually the truth. So really the main thing that we could do is produce less and consume less. But if we wait for that to happen, it would be too late, in my opinion. So I think we have to address it through other ways. I think one of the things we can do is ban plastic, because plastic in the ocean is probably one of the worst things. And I know you've heard a lot about the microfibers, and they're in everything now. So we really need to not just filter out plastics, but we have to stop using plastics. And I also think recycled plastic is not so great. I mean, at first it had a moment of recycled materials, but really any plastic I don't think is good. So I think those are two basic things that I think people can do. I think we live in a world where there's a lot of material already. So not to produce material is very good. Upcycled material, recycled material. You know, the new customer, there's lots of data that the younger generation has no problem buying resale or vintage, and is very clever at repair or renting. We've seen that do very well. So a lot of those new alternative businesses are very interesting, and they're growing quite rapidly. I think also too, the other thing is really sourcing and producing locally. I mean, there's a statistic I read it down from Levi's that said that 46% of the environmental footprint of a jean has to do with production and transportation. So if you're producing locally and you're, you can reduce your transportation. So I think those are some of the things that a brand can do. I think that also in the circularity of things is really interesting. There's a company, Zytec, that was really responsible for when Everlane launched their denim brand. They were actually a part of the story of the jean. And they, what they do is they were recycling the water. There's a lot of water used in denim production, and they were recycling it to make bricks. So they actually took the runoff water, made bricks, and created low-income housing with the bricks. So, these inventive things are not only good for the environment, but they're also good for business. These new business models are actually very interesting, and they're very interesting to the investment community too. So what I would also say, and this is not really said that often, but if you are coming up and using and engaging in these new technologies, you're looking very interesting to investors as well. So lots to say there.
Yeah. There's lots of things to discuss, and I want to know the opinion of Sara and Marina, who, by the way, are curators of the exhibition at the Ferragamo Museum in Florence. They also collaborate on a new project that was created by Sara, a new awareness. What is a new awareness, Sara, and is it focused to create fashion in a more eco-friendly way?
Well, no, it was created more for the word itself, awareness, because I do think that obviously everyone has its own, has its important role in this industry. And so we need to leave, who knows how to produce and who knows, how to do a better way of production to the people that know how to do it. So I do think that more was the role of creating this project to create awareness, because the important thing right now, I think, is also to make understand future consumers how they can buy better and what means their impact on buying, like, as Julie was saying, a pair of jeans, and making them understand really the difference of buying, a pair of jeans that maybe is made at kilometer zero. So, that it's local, rather than thinking of doing sustainable denim, and then it has to cross the whole world, and the thing of the transportation and everything. So it was, you know, a new awareness, because obviously it's new, not maybe for us, but it's a little bit new for everyone else, because I mean, not everyone has really the knowledge of what it means to be responsible, to be sustainable. So this project was created to be to aware, so to give more consciousness to people. And obviously the idea was to do it together, because nowadays, you know, you have to be a group. It's not individuals that go by themselves. So it's important to have also a team of people that have different knowledges and, you know, can help to spread the word.
Yeah, talking about awareness, Marina is the co-author of a new book just out in Italy, La rivoluzione comincia dal tuo armadio. The revolution starts in your closet. And Marina, in this book, you explain, among other things, that a t-shirt that costs only $10 is not ethical. Can you explain why? Probably because it's made in places like the Rana Plaza, the building that collapsed in Pakistan 7 years ago, I think, killing more than 1,000 people and injuring many more. And your fashion revolution started exactly that year, right? Have things improved since then or not? Have things changed?
Well, many things have improved and have moved since then. Ursula de Castro and Carrie Sommers founded in London this movement in 2013, and today we're in more than 100 countries in the world. And as Sara was saying earlier, it's all about creating awareness, and it's a lot about education as well. So basically what has changed and what has improved, not only from the manufacturing point of view, we see, for example, in Bangladesh, where it happened, we now have a coalition, and the Bangladesh Accord was signed by many, many companies. So the minimum wage is not as bad as it used to be. A lot of buildings have gone under structural changes to make them safer. So definitely those 1,138 people have started a movement that has now created even big factories in Southeast Asia that are certified and they are, you know, paying a living wage and not polluting. So if people want to go and produce there, it's actually possible today to produce democratic fashion sustainably. I also have, when I say the revolution starts from your closet, I have some revolutionary ideas, which is, for example, I think if fast fashion started producing less, as Julie said, much less, and more correctly, more sustainably, whatever fraction of a price is on top of that t-shirt should not be put on the shoulders of the consumers, but it should be absorbed by the big corporations by reconsidering their profit margins. So I think it's only right that fashion should be produced ethically and people should be paid the right amount. And we see also in Italy, for example, I wrote the book with Luisa Ciuni because I realized that I'm not only a designer, a consultant, but I'm also a teacher. And I have classes at YED, I have many students I teach sustainability to. And I realized they belong to Gen Z. I'm like going into the class saying, yeah, you're gonna know everything about this before even I open my mouth. And unfortunately they don't. So for me, it's a big shock because I read all these amazing reports from McKinsey and from, you know, Business of Fashion, Gen Z, they're all aware, maybe, but maybe not. So we wanted to do a book that it's it's very simple. It gives you a background of why fashion is one of the most polluting industries and why is one of the most not equitable, you know, socially. And then in the second part, when I come in, I talk about the solutions because there are many, many, many solutions and people are ready for ideas. What we did with Fashion Revolution Italy also for the 24th of April, which is Fashion Revolution Day, we published a digital map of sustainable shopping in Italy. Because every time I go and talk or I go and talk to students, they're like, yeah, great ideas. where do I go and buy sustainable fashion? I have no idea where to go. So we said, okay, enough is enough. We're going to make a map. We're going to do, we did a call on our social media from September 2019 until December, and we mapped out the whole country. So now there's no more excuses, but people are really, really much more interested. I see the press is more interested. I see younger people, brands, everybody has the sustainability bug now. Mm-hmm. Whether they're doing greenwashing or really doing it, it's another story.
Okay. Maybe the same map is available in the United States. I don't know.
Well, we'll have to tell Fashion Revolution USA to do it.
Yeah. Julie, you do consulting also with the luxury fashion brands, and several famous designers from Giorgio Armani to Alessandro Michele with Gucci have recently said that they are reevaluating the seasonality and cycles of the fashion industry. There is this discussion also Massimo Ferragamo was mentioning before, that there are too many trends, too many collections, too many fashion weeks. What do you think it will happen? A new trend will start also among fashion luxury brands?
Well, fashion luxury brands, yes, I think so. I think that the designers that are very close to their collections, like Alessandro, they're burnt out. It's very difficult for, I talk to designers, their dream is to do 2 collections a year. They don't want to do, 4, 6, 8 collections a year. But what's happening is the whole system is changing. What you have the luxury brands that, they're big and it's hard for them to shift because their structure is so set. But you have hundreds of designers that do businesses around them, and they're getting together as we speak, and they're really addressing the issues. The Business of Fashion is doing an interesting, they've helped organize the designers. They're not leading it, so it's not being led by the Business of Fashion. It's called Rewiring Fashion, and those designers are saying the constant stream of markdowns is killing my business. The constant need for product all the time is not sustainable. And with the COVID, and now with all the unrest here in the U.S. and abroad, it's a dire situation. They're trying to stay in business. So the only way that they can stay in business is if the system changes. So they've put out, and I've been on some of these calls with them, and there's like 70 designers, and they're from contemporary to luxury. I have to say there's none of the big luxury brands like a Valentino or an Armani or something like that, but they're large enough and significant enough and have significant businesses. So they're basically saying that we want markdowns twice a year. And there's other groups too, like Dries Van Noten has a group. I think Mark Metrick at Saks has a group, and they're all trying to figure out. But the great thing is everybody's talking. Yeah. So, but I do think that the seasonality of the markdowns will definitely be addressed, and that the system of having all these collections will probably have to shift, and the fashion shows and presentations themselves are shifting right now because we can't do them for at least the next bit. We are forced to go into the digital selling and presentation. We just don't have a choice. No one can travel, no one can gather. So we will be experiencing this new way of engaging with retailers and designers. So it's going to be very interesting. How it shakes out, I don't know, but it is definitely changing. And also in this platform, which is really great, is the sustainability part, because that's actually on the forefront of the conversation too. You cannot create a brand without being responsible anymore. You just can't. I mean, probably COVID, who knows, is somehow connected to environmental situations. So, you know, there's just so many things that are so evident. And also too, especially you in Italy, the first thing that I heard was how beautiful Venice became and how Milan, all of a sudden you could breathe differently. So right there, we're Los Angeles. It completely changed the way, you know, with less cars and less people, we could see, we actually saw it, and people are really liking that. So, and then the last thing I'll say is that, which I think is very, very important, is you know, I'll summarize it with Black Lives Matter, but that's going to change the industry. We will have to engage in other cultures just as much as we do, you know, the way we've been doing now. It's not going to be secondary. It will have to be integrated, and we're going to have to make space. And it's just something about the balance, and it's such a strong movement here in the United States. And I know Sara and I watch trends all the time, and we feel it. I feel this is so powerful. It's not just a voice that's going to go away. It's going to change business, and they're organizing. So it's a fascinating, incredible time. And what's really great in terms of this conversation is the sustainability issue is not going away. When we had the recession, the sustainability whole platform went quiet because people were just trying to stay in business. Now people are trying to stay in business, but they also want to stay in business in a sustainable, more equal way. So if we can get through this really difficult time, and I think it is going to be very challenging over the next year or two, but if we can just stay the course, we'll end up at the other side in a much better place.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Julie. Sara, you are also the Deputy Chief Editor, Editor-in-Chief of Vogue Italy. What do you hear from your readers? Are customers ready for a new behavior towards fashion? We cannot hear you.
Yeah. Sorry, I realized. Sorry, it always happens. So, no, I was saying that it's always going back also to what I was saying before. It's that it's our responsibility, you know, to aware our readers and to give messages to our readers. So obviously Italian Vogue has always been in its history to give messages and also social messages, because it's very important, you know, it's not just about fashion. I mean, fashion is it's something to be seen 360 degrees in culture, in art. I mean, you see it everywhere. So I mean, what our readers are pretending now is that obviously Italian Vogue is not like the right magazine to understand what the readers want, but it's the right magazine to give the message of what's happening and what needs to be done. So it's a little bit different. It's kind of a state of like, it's like every issue, it's like a manifesto where you need to give a message. And this is something that has always been done. And obviously in this last issues, you know, we decided to give very, very strong statements. I mean, in the April issue, we decided to come out for the first time in history with a white cover, because it was a way to say of a restart, and it was also a way to respect. And this in June issue, we dedicated to children, because children are our future, and so we need to invest them. And in January, we decided to give just illustrated covers, which was always the first time done. So you have to give messages. I mean, this is our responsibility. So the readers are obviously, as before, as the consumers, need to pretend to have this kind of messages even from magazines.
Yeah, well, talking from the point of view of a designer, Marina, you are also a designer. And what impact can the attention to sustainability have on the creative process? What does it mean in terms of designing a new dress or any other fashion product? We also have a question from the audience, from Layli Waxman. She or he is a young designer in the fashion industry in New York, and asks, how can I or others in my position become more involved in sustainable fashion? Where could we learn more about technologies that could be applied to our industry? Again, from a designer point of view, Marina.
Yes, I think one of the great opportunities that we have right now is, and an easy one, is to choose sustainable materials. For example, my specialty is knitwear. I consult, right now I'm working with Marni, but I've consulted with many other luxury firms like Prada and Ferragamo itself. So if you can start by choosing, for example, we're using a lot of organic cotton, we're using recycled cashmere in the knitwear. So in what is my sphere, I'm trying to avoid blends. So I favor completely 100% natural materials because I know they're more circular, because at the end of its life cycle, in theory, it can be composted, whereas if you have a blend of nylon, 20%, and then 80% wool, already that item, it's no longer on a circular pattern. So the first thing you can do is start from the material. Another thing you can do is do zero waste pattern making, which means there's beautiful books and tutorials on how to cut a pattern, so that there were at the end of your cutting process, there's no any wasted material on the floor. Another way is maybe start from vintage or things that already exist and transform them. Or of course there is upcycling, so you can go in and get dead stock from factories of end of the roll fabric, which means if you've sold 1,000 meters of something and you have 30 meters or 50 meters left over, or 10 meters, usually companies throw it away or burn it. But if a designer goes and claims those meters, they can produce new things with something that already exists. That's not using virgin resources. So I think there's many, many ways. There's also a really great store, actually 2 stores in New York called The Canvas. And they host a lot of sustainable designers. One is in Williamsburg and one is in Manhattan. And what they do is each designer has 1 or 2 of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations hanging as a tag from their hanger. Because what also young brands do today is they decide to target 1 or more goals from the United Nations Development Goals. And thus you can, be sustainable more on an environmental way, so you can choose the correct material, or you can approach the social and you can have your things made either locally or by inmates of a prison. I mean, there's very, very many ways to be sustainable. It's a whole world out there.
Yeah, Marina mentioned the recycling, and we have a question from Beli Yashin. What do the panelists think about thrifting and recycling vintage clothes? Julie, do you want to say anything about this? We don't hear you.
Muted, so you couldn't hear the background. I think that's a great alternative, and there's a couple of companies that are doing it. There's one out in LA. It's called Atelier and Repair, and they're actually that's what they do. They take pre-existing materials or pre-existing garments and they refurbish them, and they make them different. They customize them. It's great. So you get the feeling that you're getting this sort of customized thing, but it could have been dead stock. It's a lot of it is dead stock, but it could also be reused material, upcycled material. So I think it's a very clever way to produce a collection, and I think we are going into a future where it can be scaled. and especially with denim. Denim is a great subject for that. And that's already been being done, like circular denim, where you're, producing it in the most sustainable way, and it never goes away because you're constantly recycling it, upcycling it, redoing it. So, it's interesting. And again, I think there's good business in that. So it's attracting a lot of money so that it can scale.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and talking again about materials and new materials and innovation, Massimo Ferragamo earlier mentioned clothes stuff made with orange peels, and I think he referred to this Italian startup, Orange Fiber, that is mentioned also in Marina's book. What it is about, and is it an example of new technologies and innovation in this field, Marina?
Absolutely. I must say there's like amazing new materials. I know very well the two founders of Orange Fiber, and they've now been able to do an equity fundraising and been able to gather a lot of money to scale the business. And they've also moved their machines right inside the factory that makes the orange juice. So they're right there where all the peels of the oranges are being discarded, and they go directly into their machine to make this beautiful silk-like fabric. So that's fantastic. And we have new kinds of vegan leather. In Italy, we have Vegea, which is made from the leftovers of the production of wine. We have Frumat, apple skin, like we said, from the making of apple juice. And in Mexico, they just come up with something beautiful made from cactus. It's called Deserto. And so there's so many. There's also a beautiful startup called Rod that dyes the material with graphite, with recycled graphite, and uses much less water and produces much less CO2. So there's amazing, I think innovation is going to be, besides repurposing and cutting waste, I think innovation is one of the propelling forces behind sustainability today.
Yeah, and from the audience we have Simone Pavesi saying that in his opinion the use of materials such as oranges, apples and so on should become normal and not be limited to capsule collections. Sara, somebody earlier mentioned artisans as big players in these new trends, and another person from the audience, Caio Liberato, asks, do you see local artisans being a solution not only for materials but also economically as a solution for retail? What do you think about that?
Artisans have always been, in the industry, and Made in Italy is practically made with artisans. So right now, obviously, going back to what was Julie saying before, I mean, the big crisis is not just about the designers, but it's about the local artisans and all the small entrepreneurs that are behind the fashion industry, and that people do not even know their existence, but it's really a very big part of it. So I think that obviously it's going to be kind of local right now, because we have to be local because we're not traveling and we cannot move so much. So I do hope that these small entrepreneurs are being helped, but as we said before, it's not just about the fashion system, it's all the system and also the governments, because all these small entrepreneurs are not able to survive if they're not helped. And obviously they are our, kind of our, what's the quality of Made in Italy? It's about artisans. So this is something that it's really the pure heart of it. So I do believe that they're still going on, but we know perfectly that they're also disappearing, because with the fast production and about the quantity and not the quality, they have been kind of forgotten. And I remember 5 years ago, we did an exhibition with young designers and we put them in contact with artisans, because they were not even kind of aware of how many there were, because it's always about going back to the fact of making awareness so that people become aware and conscious about what they have around. And so it's also about the artisans, which in a way, the artisans are also all these new innovation startups that we were talking in the Marina about, the oranges and the leather. They are artisans too, because they are kind of local, they work in a responsible way, and they're looking for innovation, which is going to be our savior.
Yeah, talking about retail, apart from the artisanal boutique, what about the department stores like Saks or Barney's or stuff like that? We have a question from Alessandra Rotondi from the audience, and she asks, since department stores and others will have to face new ways of selling, such as selling luxury through Zoom meetings with clients, and returns through curbside, do you think that these will be also ways to promote a more sustainable and ethical fashion? Who wants to answer?
I mean, I can answer from an American point of view. I think that it will, because I think what's happening here is that, you know, we have the Zoom meetings, we have the digital, we have the online shopping, but more purchases are made in a store still. And so I think everything is going to be a little bit more localized. And I don't think that there'll be a lot of a mass going into large stores. I think it'll be very particular. So I think we're going to see a growth of a more local kind of retail scenario, which I have to believe kind of is supportive of that whole kind of maybe smaller designers, maybe more local production. You know, I think it's definitely going to change the way we engage in shopping. And I think everything was sort of at an excessive peak. And I think we're really watching it because of what we know now, and also because of the expensive things. I mean, we can't waste, everyone's financially tight. So everything has to get really efficient. And that's part of sustainability.
Mm-hmm. And what about, so we have talked about small boutiques, artisanal boutiques, great department stores. What about the e-commerce? I mean, already before the coronavirus crisis, brick and mortars stores were in crisis. And during this crisis, the only business going on was online, of course. You, Julie, were a consultant for Amazon Fashion, right? Yeah. So which role the e-commerce, the online platforms can play in this new scenario, in this new world?
Well, I think one of the most important things that they can do is be platforms for business. I mean, there's a lot of businesses, small and medium-sized brands I keep mentioning, but they're struggling. So if they can get their product out there in front of people, and there's a trend of marketplace. There's a lot of marketplace online, like little mini Farfetches that are more boutique. That's happening. So it really enables a brand to be able to showcase themselves in more places. But I think we have a long ways to go, only because I've experienced my packaging deliveries from Amazon. I think one day I got 4 boxes, and in each box was a separate item. And, you know, whether it's recycled cardboard or not, they could have all been put in one box. So I think we have a ways to go on that.
Yeah, talking about online platforms and e-commerce, it's interesting to note that one of the most innovative fashion shopping sites was created 20 years ago by an Italian entrepreneur, Federico Marchetti, and it's a Yux that I believe many of you know. Among other things, one section of the website of Yux is dedicated to sustainable fashion and offers, quote, brands and products that demonstrate a positive social and environmental impact, unquote. Is that the right way to go, Sara?
Well, I mean, no, I know. We work with them. We've been doing projects since 10 years, and this year we've launched a called Vogue Challenge, which is open to startups and designers that believe in responsible projects. So, yeah, I mean, he was innovative in everything because, as you said, he started 20 years ago, and already 10 years ago he opened the section called Oxygen, and obviously it was a period that nobody was talking about or knew about to be sustainable. But I think it's important. I mean, obviously e-commerce, especially in the lockdown, has been a kind of a savior for everyone. I mean, and we know Amazon was the major one because obviously he had the potential, to arrive to everyone. So yes, I mean, going back to your answer, obviously it's correct, because once you begin to think and believe in something, in a change, you have to use all the possible way of communicating it. And right now, e-commerce are obviously the most easiest and fastest direct vehicle to get to people. But what I want to underline is that obviously now we're obliged to be totally digital because we cannot travel, we cannot engage, we cannot gather, and all of that. And probably this is gonna be almost for all 2020, unfortunately. But the thing is that we cannot really think of that this is our new normal, because we need to get back to something that was similar to before, not as a rhythm, but the fact of exchanging, of seeing people. But we have to see it in a different way. That's the only way. I've been about the quality and not the quantity, about slowing down. But we cannot think that it has to be just digital, because we Italians that are very physical and that we want to meet people, but it's for everyone. I think that we need to, get back also to interact, because it's so easy to think about being here like today behind the screen and not interacting anymore, or even being locked down for 3 months. I mean, the human being becomes used to everything very fast, and this is not the normal way of getting used to it. I think we have to get used to a normal new life in a better way. But I mean, the beauty of the emotional things, you see it when it's physical, or you can at least share it with someone and not just out for a video. So I think it's very important. But digital, obviously, it's something that we're gonna need. It's innovation, and it's gonna bring so much easier things and in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Right. One of the bad effects of the lockdown is the fact that there are tons of clothes, shoes, accessories unsold because the stores were closed, and they are still mostly closed now. I read somewhere, Marina, that you have a brilliant new idea about recycling all this stuff. Can you explain?
It's actually, it's an idea that could work, which is rethinking stock from different brands, having intervention on the stock creatively, maybe involving young creators, and repurposing and creating, in the shop a corner where you put this, a retrovolution kind of, things that are iconic of the brand, but have been revisited, so they become new. I think we cannot afford to burn or chuck clothing anymore. I think it's really unacceptable. Also because of all the work that goes into making clothes. The clothing industry is one of the most labor-intensive industries in the world. We have about 70 million people working in the fashion industry. So it's really an insult when you hear the big brands burn their excess stock or whatever was made, because so much effort and so much human energy went into making these clothes. So I think it has to be repurposed, rethought, and put back into the channels. And we will see this also with what it's been unsold from this pandemic. I think really it also takes us to the point where we should design more timeless fashion, meaning that we should make pieces that are beautiful, that are of quality, and they're not so much attached to a specific year or a specific season. So timeless, beautiful, flowing fashion. That's what I'm imagining.
Marina, can I say something? Sorry, Maria, if it's okay.
Yeah.
I think that we really have to be aggressive about certain things and really drive policy. And the Fashion Revolution, I think, is the perfect platform because you have a lot of people that are engaged. And that's how we will change our government in the U.S. is that it's engagement, it's voters, it's grassroots. And I think the burning thing is absolutely unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
And that I think I heard, and I don't know if this is true because I didn't research it, but someone told me that some of the companies, whether they're major or not, I don't know, are burning and taking the fine because to burn it and take the fine is somehow economically less impactful. So I just think we have to. Sometimes you have to force, it's like children, you have to set down laws.
No, absolutely. But Julie, you know that Fashion Revolution International has made a proposal with another 30 NGOs. We made a set of a new proposal for a textile law that was sent to the European Parliament. And it talks about all these things. It talks about labels that should have QR codes that tell us exactly what are the ingredients of something that it was made, the carbon footprint, where was it made, and also, eliminating completely textile dumps because we know the landfills that have textile create methane gas, but also leak horrendous chemicals into the waterways, and then it goes into the ocean and all that. So this, if you want me, I'll send you the proposal that we sent to the EU. It's really comprehensive and quite fantastic. So yes, with Fashion Revolution, we're being very proactive because I believe that the solution is like pliers. You need the grassroots movement, which is us, the consumers, but you need the laws, and then you need to do this, clack. And that's it. They can't get away.
Thank you, Marina. I'm sure that on the website of Fashion Revolution, the people interested can find the proposal.
Yes.
Talking about the production, where the production is done, we have a question from Generosa Protano. She asks, how much do major Italian fashion houses produce their products in Italy and how much out of the country? And if out of the country, in which countries does Italy farm the work out to? Any possibility of returning work to Italians in Italy? Sara, do you want to answer?
Well, yes, then I leave it also to Marina that she knows this aspect a little bit more. I mean, obviously we don't have, the exact numbers and the country is kind of clear which are the countries because look at when it happened 7 years ago in Bangladesh. But obviously, I mean, it's not a tricky question, but it's difficult to answer because as Julie and Marina were saying before, until there are not specific laws, I mean, there's not really difficult to track down how really the production is done. I mean, there are, and Marina probably knows better than myself, but I think that the laws are very, very important to be done because they're not specific laws in fashion. Everyone does really what they want. And even this fact of that in the end, brands prefer to pay the fine by burning the clothes because it means that the fine is not so expensive because if they're willing to pay it, it means that it's worth doing it. So there's really something wrong in the system and it's where everything needs to be changed.
In your book, Marina, somewhere you say that actually fabrics and yarns made in Italy are the most clean, green, and sustainable in the world. Is that so? Why?
I am very proud of our textile industry. I purchase, for example, yarns, and when I go to Pitti Filati, I would say that literally almost 80% of the companies that show their yarns and their beautiful materials there are certified. A lot of them have, applied the detox challenge of Greenpeace. They are recycling yarns. It's the innovation that it's being created is absolutely fantastic. And it's really, you find on a color card, there is now one page only dedicated to certifications. And this is, there's many reasons why this has happened. A little bit because we do believe in quality and we do love nature. So it's quite natural, but also all the luxury brands of the world, especially not only the Italians, but the French, come and produce here. And they have very high standards for what they want to buy and also where they want to be produced. So also factories, the factories that have survived all this made out phenomenon are very good factories. They produce extreme good quality. They pay the right amount. The environment is safe. They don't pollute. So I think the textile industry that again has survived because we lost so many small to medium-sized industry here in Italy during the beginning of the 2000s when everything started going to the Far East Asia and all of that. We lost a tremendous amount. But what is left is of extreme high quality, both for the materials, the textiles, the yarns, and the production. So yes.
Mm-hmm. Great, very good news. Thank you. Talking about the future, Julie, you sit on the board of Parsons, the new school for design. What's going on in schools that prepare new designers? What kind of emerging talents are you seeing?
It's so sad because all the kids, they did their final thesis. I mean, these like graduates, and many of them were in just a singular room by themselves. That's not why they went to school. It's so sad. They're all, they're the next generation, and they're very much into all the things that we've been talking about. They're creative, and they're also very, they had a whole set of restrictions for them creating. They couldn't show their senior things on models. They couldn't, you couldn't touch anything. So they had to create a way to communicate what they were doing. And I have to say, I was so impressed. I mean, I think what some of these students did, companies pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for other people to do. And it's a resource because these kids have grown up digital. And so they're really able to manipulate it. So, I think that we have to figure out the education system. It's going through a big transition, just like the fashion system is. But going to, I think it was Sarah's point, or I forget who it was, but no, it was Sarah, that people want to engage with each other. They need to work off each other. I mean, how are you going to be creative in a Zoom conversation? You're much more creative, can be, but you're much more creative when you're together. So we have to figure that out. But I think that they are very good at using technology, and so they can translate their dreams that way. And I think that that's been less restrictive than having to do it. It's more challenging to do it, but you see the dream, and then you think, oh, let's help them create that. Mm-hmm. So it's been very interesting.
Yeah, and what about Italy? Sara, you're also international ambassador of Camera Nazionale della Moda Italiana, right? And I know that you launched the initiative hashtag Together for Tomorrow to support new generations of Italian designers and small fashion entrepreneurs. How is it going, this project? You think that Made in Italy will thrive again after all this crisis?
Well, I mean, we're Italians. I mean, we don't stop in front of crisis, but obviously, I mean, we need to be helped. So the initiative that we launched with Camera Nazionale Moda and the Camera Fashion Trust together for tomorrow, it's the word that says it, together, because it's a system and we have to be together, and it's for tomorrow because it's the new generation. So ideally, the whole process of the fundraising, obviously it's trying to find funds, but right now we are organizing webinars and we're helping them out. Legal problems, we are putting them in contact with retailers and people from the fashion system that can help them to support and give them insights and, you know, and give them visions of how to behave and to kind of challenge the future, you know, because anyways, as Julie was saying, they're all young and they're very, very smart on digital, so they know how to move around. But right now, the real problem is cash flow. So we really need to help them out to support them economically, or support them in a way that the big major problem is stock, so to try and sell it. And so it's going well. It's a lot because we started more or less with 40 designers. We have at least now 90 designers, and they're all new generation. The oldest one is in business since 10 years and the newest maybe since 1 year. And they're all made in Italy, because obviously made in Italy is very important for us, but it's also with a percentage of foreign people that decided to invest in Italy and to move on. So yeah, it's positive, and it's not something, it's being created obviously in a moment of crisis, but it's something that we want to keep going on, because it's a little bit our purpose of, you know, supporting our future.
Yeah. Again, for Sara, we have a question from Arianna Menon. How do you think the editorial world will emerge from this peculiar moment in time? Do you think working from home will be the new normal? Do you think we will see more content transitioning online rather than being available in print? Well, that's a trend already going on for a long time. I'm curious also about how, fashion magazine will face all the fallout also on advertising from the brands. Sara?
It's not about emerging, but it's about evolving. I mean, magazines are evolving. So obviously the print has been hit hard in the past 10 years and 5 years mostly much. And now obviously COVID hasn't helped, but magazines have the power of communication, and obviously through digital, Instagram, and all the other tools that you have for communication. So print magazine will stay. Obviously, we're not talking about the quantity of print magazines there are now, because it's hard, but also the fact that print magazines have always been very linked to, you know, to advertising that had to, you know, print on magazine. But now the way of doing advertising and having money, it's a little bit evolving of doing experiences and different aspects. So I do think that it's about, you know, having the creative mind of evolving and of thinking of new boundaries without thinking that it's all about the print. I mean, the print, it's the starting point of something that then can be seen in much more of a wilder scale. So it's not, no, this, I mean, I'm not thinking about to stay my whole life stuck in my home in a room speaking throughout a video and doing smart working. No. So this is not it's not our future. It's our new way of working. I mean, I think that there are going to be much less consumption and less traveling, because before we traveled for anything or we moved, and we don't need this. It's necessary. It's a redimension of doing things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, working always from home is also bad business for fashion, because we don't need to dress up to go to meetings. We don't buy any more clothes. That's a big problem for brands whose clients are business people and so on, or professionals. We have a comment and a question from Roberto. He says, sustainability is not something new, but it has never been really embraced fully by the industry so far, he says. How much do you think the big corporations, fast fashion retailers in particular, are in for the long run this time around, since it will imply to drastically change at high cost the backbone of their production and distribution? Julie, Marina, who wants to answer?
Well, I think they have to change because I think this crisis has become an opportunity for a lot of young people to really look at things in a different way. So I think in order, like Sara was saying, magazine is going to evolve. I think fast fashion has to evolve if it wants to survive, because it's now become apparent to a lot more people what is behind fast fashion. And the problem today is that a lot of very, very big players in fast fashion are becoming sustainable, more sustainable environmentally, but they're not dealing with the social aspect. So they're still not paying people the correct amount. So there's still a lot of, wrongdoing on the social side. So people don't realize that because they see big campaigns about, green this and green that, and they don't go a little bit deeper to see what actually is happening. They're also very smart because, for example, Fashion Revolution does a transparency index, and that's what it is. It's about transparency. So we ask brands a bunch of questions, and depending on how they respond, we rate them on a transparency level. But being very transparent does not necessarily mean that you are sustainable. But in order to understand if a company is sustainable, you need to have the data from the company and the transparency. So there's a big diatribe going on now with these big conglomerates that are being extremely transparent, but not very sustainable. So there's a little bit of a quid pro quo now going on.
Julie, you want to add anything?
I think you said that really well. I think that I think we'll have to see how it all evolves. One of the things is that I was just thinking while you were saying that is that it's really hard to predict the future. So in a way, we're really big at planning, but whatever we planned 6 months ago definitely just went out the window. So I think maybe the way we plan may be a little different. We may want to slow our planning down a little bit and be more solid and not so fast, and make sure that we're making small, strong changes than these vast sweeping changes that we can't really sustain. I don't know. I'm just thinking we have to rethink everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
A question from maybe a new designer or Tsipora Zito asking, what's a good resource for finding a responsible factory to partner with an emerging brand?
There is a really great platform called Common Objective. On Common Objective, you can either become a member or look at the resources, and they actually pair up people that are looking for, sustainable production or sustainable fabrics. There's platforms like that a lot now online. So but Common Objective is one of the best ones. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, Fashion for Good from Amsterdam is also a really great resource. So there are places and resources that you can tap into to find out.
Yeah, I think we have just a few minutes also because we didn't mention it before that Sara and Marina are from Italy, so there it's past midnight and
oh no,
they must go soon. And thank you so much for being available at this time. So one or two more questions very quickly. Kevin asks, most of the conversations in the industry are around the sustainability, are around clothes and apparel. What are your thoughts on shoes and footwear?
Well, it's a little bit the kind of the same challenge. I mean, obviously for accessories and footwear and bags, the big challenge is the leather, because obviously leather is something, they've been trying, and Marina was talking about this two guys from Mexico that they were doing leather from cactus. I also met a brand that they were doing leather from grape. I mean, there's big studies, but it's very, very far away, the quality that does real leather. So, I mean, it's a challenge, but I think that it's going to take time, but we're going to get there. And I do think that with Marina, we've always been discussing about that brands should begin to communicate a little bit more, even though they're not totally sustainable, but they are going in that direction, because also that it's a way to aware the consumers, because if not, consumers always think that nobody's doing it. So even though, I mean, you're not going to be sustainable from one day to another. So it takes time, and there's going to always be a time that it's going to be controversial. But I think it's about, being perseverant.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I think it's really very late for our Italian friends, and I think we have answered most of the questions from the audience, and I think it's been very interesting and also full of new ideas and optimism also about the future. Okay, we are in this crisis, but we are very confident that we will overcome with in new ways and possibly in new beautiful ways also, because we are talking about fashion. So so thank you everybody for joining us. The consul and the director want to say the last word.
I would like to thank everybody on this last and very interesting webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice to be here.
Thank you very much.
Julie, and thank you to the Consul General as well for his great support on this series.
Thank you.
Okay, buonanotte.
Grazie Francesco. Thank you, Francesco.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Maria.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you, Marina. Thank you, Julie. Grazie a tutti. It was indeed a night of Italian pride.
Yes.
Grazie.
Grazie. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.